Hey motivators, this is Drostan and welcome to my channel. We're here with Chris, who also has had problems with exertional compartment syndrome, and he's agreed to let us interview him and find out a little bit more about his story and what's going on with him. So thanks, Chris.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and sit down and let's get this going.
So, basically, the point of the discussion today is compartment syndrome. I understand that you had that, or have that, I guess. It kind of doesn't ever go away, is my understanding. So, have you always had exertional compartment syndrome, or was that something that kind of developed later in life?
Yeah, it definitely developed later. I was always very active growing up, played a lot of sports. Even when I was in the military after that, stayed in shape, and then just kind of came up out of nowhere at roughly like 30 years old.
Okay. Was that while you were in the military, or was that after?
No, it was after. I think it was just after. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What symptoms did you notice? Like, what kind of brought on the thought of, something's wrong here?
Yeah, I was getting into kind of distance running, something I'd never really done before, and then it's like the classic, you hit 30 and you're having some crisis, so you decide what random hobby you're getting into now. So I was doing more distance running. So my long runs, nothing crazy, but my long runs were getting to about 10 miles per run, and I was adding in terrain, and I noticed when I was doing that, my legs were just like killing me. So I would ice my legs when I got home, and then one day I bought new shoes, didn't really test them out, and just ran 10 miles in them, and felt amazing, was like setting PRs, and the next day was not good.
Not good.
It was not good. It was very, very painful.
Okay. Did you have any like shin splints or stress fractures or other risk factors around that time?
I would say thinking back on it now, yeah, I was experiencing what I would probably say were shin splints. I was thinking it was because I was running on not just pavement, but I started running on uneven terrain. So I thought that's where that was coming from. But I think that was probably an early sign that I missed and blew through.
Yeah, I kind of had similar experience. Actually, it's very common for compartment syndrome to be misdiagnosed as shin splints, and that was a common reoccurrence, at least in my case.
Yeah.
Speaking of diagnosis, how long did it take you to get diagnosed? Was it a long process, or was it kind of, hey, you have compartment syndrome?
Yeah, it was probably, gosh, I haven't thought about it in a minute, but probably somewhere in the minimum 1 year, probably closer to 2 year, 4 to 5 doctors to get properly diagnosed.
Okay. Yeah, I've read that that's common. That was common in my case as well. So I'm not surprised at all that that's what happened.
Yeah.
Did you have to undergo any sort of testing or anything like that for the diagnosis?
Yeah. So at that 4th or 5th doctor, the one that finally was able to figure out, had a pretty good hunch what it was, he referred me to the doctor in Kansas City who does like the Major League Soccer team.
Oh, okay.
And that doctor had me basically run on a treadmill for a while. And then after I did that, they took like, I don't know exactly how big it was, but it felt enormous. They took basically like a giant needle that would measure the pressure in different compartments in your legs. And they did that all around my legs. And I remember at the time, I was like, man, I was stone facing it on the outside, while they were like doing this test. And the doctor had a few like resident people training underneath him. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the ladies there like looked at me and she's like, you were doing like really well. And I was like, I didn't think much of it. And then by the time that test was over, I didn't realize how much pain I was in until I got back to work, and they were just like, you should just go home. Like they just saw me and like, you look horrible, you should go home. And I was like, yeah, that's when I realized like how much pain I was in.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I did not have to do that.
Yeah.
That particular test. Basically, I did every other single test that you could possibly do. I had MRIs, I had CAT scans, I did another one which was similar to that, except they were basically just looking for a pulse. Mm-hmm. So I did like a run on the treadmill or whatever, and then they just put like a little sonogram basically at like my ankle, and there was no pulse, which quote unquote is bad.
Yeah,
That's what they say anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Sounds bad.
It was wild because I do remember one of the legs, he like basically popped in to the particular compartment that was hurting, and it was like immediately like, yeah, that's a problem. And he went into the other one, and from what I can remember, he like couldn't get it in, or it wasn't giving him the right reading, so he was like really torquing on it like multiple times.
Oh, man.
And I think that's what kind of pushed it over the edge.
Yeah, that just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Oh man. What kind of treatment did you try? Like either surgical intervention or non-surgical intervention?
Yeah, so before I had surgery, I want to say 2-ish of the 4 doctors basically put me in a boot for roughly 6-ish weeks from what I remember.
Okay.
To see if that would narrow it down. And it would take away the pain while it was in the boot, but as soon as I could articulate the leg again, it would seem to hurt. So after that, I did end up going through surgery, and I had surgery on both legs, and that was a very long recovery process.
Was that a fasciotomy?
I believe that's correct.
Where they just open it up?
Right.
Do you happen to remember if it was a 4 or 2 compartment?
It was one compartment on both legs, is my understanding. So it's like kind of I've got photos I'll have to send you. It's just on the like above the interior ankle ball, like above that. If you follow that up,
right?
It was kind of inside there on both of my legs.
Okay, all right, that's not as bad. We can get some pictures of your scars and we can compare, because mine are kind of wicked compared to most people that I've seen that have had fasciotomies.
Yeah, mine luckily now, like I said, it's been probably at least 5 to 7 years, somewhere in there. They're pretty not very noticeable anymore.
Yeah, mine isn't super noticeable. It's just really long.
Yeah.
Before surgery, did you do any sort of physical therapy or anything that in addition to the boot, or did they just kind of throw you in a boot and say, we'll see if that works?
Yeah, I did multiple stints of physical therapy. Ironically, I kind of did multiple stints of physical therapy before and after, and neither one of those seemed to help at all. Because it's very unique. Like, I think most people, there's several different types of compartment syndrome. Mine was technically, I think, exertional compartment syndrome. However, it wouldn't always manifest that way. Like, sometimes I could run, for example, and I'd be fine. Sometimes literally I would just stand up and it would be excruciating. So I never really learned that real trigger, if you will, on what it was. But by the time I had surgery, it was basically like I couldn't really walk like a half block without being in utter pain.
Yeah, that was my experience. I had basically, I couldn't even stand in place for more than like a minute or two before I would start getting like excruciating pain, even worse than my stress fracture. And I hiked with a quite heavy ruck up and down the hills of California with a stress fracture, and I'd rather do that than have the compartment syndrome again.
Yeah, it's no joke, man.
Yeah, it's not fun. Can you kind of go through some of your experience with the recovery after surgery, like how physical therapy went, or how you've kind of gone since then?
Yeah, so for me, my right leg rather, after surgery, pretty much got back to normal almost immediately. My left side, however, it seemed like I would still have arch problems, which was very unique. On top of that, it seemed that post-surgery that I had a lot of, I guess you would describe it as like nerve pain or phantom pain still. So it took a very long time for me to recover from that, and really any structured physical therapy wasn't really beneficial. As I'm sure is similar to you, I kind of had to build myself back up at my own pace, figuring out what my body could handle and kind of staying there, and then slowly, very slowly pushing it forward until I'm to where I am today. But it was a very, very long recovery process.
Okay, and with that today, what is an example of things that you're doing today to stay fit and active?
Yeah.
And Are you having to kind of tailor that to some of the issues you've had with compartment syndrome? Like, have you had to change some of your activities or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely did have to change a lot of my activities for a very long time. And if you read, at least at the time, if you would read online, like it seemed like folks right after they had their surgery were basically back up and running. And that was not my experience. It took several years of not being able to run like I wanted to, not be able to, hit an exercise bike or something like that. Really anything that was, even walk very far distances, which really affected my job. It's one of the reasons I went the engineering route and got out of the career I was in, which was more blue collar based, more on my feet working. And slowly, as I got better and better, I was able to re-enter that profession and do my work there. And even, for example, the church I go through to is an Orthodox Christian church, and traditionally we do standing services. The laity will stand throughout the services, and some of the liturgies can be, hour and a half is probably hour and a half to 2 hours is roughly how long that is. And I remember when I first started looking into that, I was almost even hesitant to be able to engage because I didn't know if I'd be able to stand that long. But what I have found has been that if I can slowly attempt a new or acquire a once lost skill, a once lost thing, being able to walk or what have you, I can do it, but I still have to do it kind of at my own pace, and then eventually I'll be able to somewhat negate the symptoms. They're kind of still there in the back of your head by and large, but I'm back to running pretty much as far as I want to anymore. I'm older now, so I'm only running like 3 miles when I do run.
Than me.
Well, you'll get there. But the other thing is definitely I do a lot more stretching, particularly things to stretch the fascia before and after really engaging much activity. Really helps a lot.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well since starting running again. It's very big focus. I had one day where I warmed up really well, like I did dynamic warm-ups and all that, and then I foolishly the next time was like, I don't need to do that. It was fine the last time. I'll be good. And yeah, no, it was not fine. I'm kind of regretting not having all 4 compartments done on the right leg, but it's bearable. I'm fine. So
I'm curious for you.
Mm-hmm.
I have probably, I don't know, making numbers up, 20 pairs of shoes. And the reason I have that many shoes is because some shoes can seem to elicit my symptoms, my compartment syndrome symptoms again. So I'm curious if you run into that as well.
I've run into that as well. The thing I've noticed is I've been really focusing on going back to like more minimalist type shoes and that sort of idea. Actually, Chip, my godfather, he's very big into that, and he does a lot of barefoot running. It's something that I'd like to transition into at some point. I don't think I'm ready for it right now. But having a particularly wide toe box, and in my case, I have like the widest feet on the freaking planet. Maybe I should enter into the world record for that because it's ridiculous. It's almost impossible. Even the like minimal or wide toe box shoes that are supposed to be like foot shaped or anatomical, even those sometimes are a little tight. So yeah, that's something I've noticed as well with that.
So you could do your running videos could be called like the Shire's Revenge or something.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you can make the trek to Mordor.
That's
now,
right.
So you gotta build
Actually,
back up.
kind of funny about the Hobbit foot thing. I didn't have any hair on my feet at all before I had my surgeries, and literally like the day after, or well, I guess it would have been a couple weeks after I got the cast and the not the cast, it was a splint. Once I got the splint taken off and you could actually see my foot again, magically there was a ton of hair all over my feet.
That's awesome.
So it was like, oh, I guess I'm getting blood flow again.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe that's good. Yeah. But yeah, the Hobbit feet. Oh man. And then I guess also, do you have any advice for anybody who thinks that they might be having compartment syndrome or experiencing those kind of symptoms, and what would you have wanted to know in that circumstance?
Yeah, boy, that's tough. it seems like there's just such limited information on it. I would say, if you've done the standard, you've rested a little bit, stretched, done maybe physical therapy, and it's still not working, I'm telling you, you're going to probably run into 4 or 5 doctors that are going to just run you through the rest PT protocol, and when that doesn't work, they're not going to know what to do. So if that happens, I would advise you move to the next doctor, and or if we can find what the name of that test is.
I'll have to look for it, and I'll insert it in post here.
Yeah.
I can't think of what it's called. I believe it's just a compartment pressure test.
Yeah,
I would say.
And I think it was also, for me, it was going to, this may not be the right advice, but what worked for me was going to there's a lot of, what do they call those people? The doctors that do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say don't just seek out any orthopedic surgeon. If you can seek out an orthopedic surgeon that's specifically dealing with young people, assuming that you're still active, and you're dealing with, and if that orthopedic surgeon not only is dealing with young people, but dealing with athletic people, because you probably
Sports
were doing,
medicine.
exactly.
Yeah.
You'll notice a lot of orthopedic surgeons, especially dealing with the foot and legs, most of their clients are elderly. And so, they're not used to, maybe they don't see as many young folks and see compartment syndrome quite as often as maybe somebody that's dealing with more athletic people.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. The athletic specialized orthopedic doctors, which fortunately is a lot of orthopedic doctors. They are actually, it's pretty common. That's the most common subspecialty, I guess, of orthopedics. But mine, another good thing that you can look out for would be any doctors who are former military. At least anecdotally, I've noticed all the people that I know that either have had or currently have compartment syndrome were either in the military while they had that problem, or like in your case, it developed after.
Yeah.
My doctor specifically, the one that figured it out, I walked in, I told him the symptoms, and he knew immediately what it was. The only reason I had to do more tests was because of insurance, which at that time was TRICARE. So
Yeah.
But he immediately knew what it was, and he was like, okay, I know how we're gonna fix it. We're gonna try this stuff because it's good to try non-surgical interventions, but I'm pretty sure you need surgery. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he moved back to Arizona with his family in between my 2 surgeries. So I actually had a second doctor for the other one who I did not care for. The thing with him was he convinced me to just do 2 compartment simply because my right leg was the one that wasn't as problematic for me. So I thought, yeah, that's probably good, not as much, even though the recovery and everything else would have been exactly the same. So I might as well have done the 4. But and then whenever I continued having problems afterwards, just like you did, I went back to him, and he just went, basically his response to me was, that's impossible, you can't, I fixed you.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, since I've been running again, the leg that I don't have problems anymore, or that isn't bothering me, is my left leg, which was the one that was the worst one that I had done first. And then the one that he did was the one that I'm having problems again with. But don't always believe him. Something he had told me was it's impossible. You can't get compartment syndrome again, even after you've had a fasciotomy. And from the research I've done in many places, even the first doctor said it's very common for this to occur again and needing multiple surgeries. So it kind of is what it is. That's just kind of how I've gotten through. Well, thanks, Chris, for meeting with me today and discussing this. I know it's kind of awkward and weird, and going back kind of a long time, but thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. And all I would say is, if you're dealing with this, don't get black-pilled. Like, you can get through it. You will get through it. It's going to take time. It really will. So don't put yourself on some arbitrary time frame. You have to celebrate every small victory, whether it's I made it down the road today, now I need to give myself 3 days off, whatever that is. Take those little wins and just continue to build off of it.
Thank you, Chris. You like that, didn't you? Keep watching the next part of my journey here. Or if you want to just see what's most recent, click here. Otherwise, I'm just waiting. So, yeah. Did you click it yet? Okay, alright, bye.